Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, 5-year deal. What does it mean for the Sabres in goal? What does it mean for how we evaluate goaltenders? I want to dive in and reflect on my own thoughts on Luukkonen as they've progressed. A lot of freezing cold takes on that front. Let's get to it all coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in to the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes our YouTube channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sneaky Joe DiBiase coming to you on a Monday. Thankful to be back here in Buffalo talking hockey. I've been in Rochester for really back and forth, but mostly in Rochester for like the last week as Bill's training camp was rolling. But I'm ready to go. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen talk, 5-year deal with the Buffalo Sabres, bunch of different fronts to get to on the UPL deal. We'll also have a mailbag question from one of our texters today on the show. And I do want to briefly touch on Patrik Laine, whose name is popping up in the trade rumors. But that will be more, we'll do a deep dive on Laine on our next show. But briefly on him today as well. But today is going to be all about UPL. This is a show I did not think I'd ever record. No doubt. I did not think. You know, it depends when you ask me. If you asked me 4 years ago or 3 years ago when Luukkonen was still a highly touted prospect, I might have guessed it. If you asked me a year ago, I would have thought no chance at all. I'm sitting here a year later talking about Luukkonen like we're about to talk about Luukkonen as a legitimate number one goalie in the NHL, and he is now paid like a legitimate number one goalie in the NHL. If you want to check us out on our text line, you want to get some feedback, you want to write in a question or a comment, get some breaking news, we're right on it with that UPL news. If you aren't already a texter, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres is the best way to do that. I can't wait for the text line for next season because that was I like the news updates and I like going back and forth with some fans during the summer. Just get your hockey fix a little bit, but game days, game nights are a lot of fun going back and forth with you when they're actually playing. Still a couple of months away, though, until that happens. So a lot to get to, as I mentioned. The question I want to get to from one of our listeners on our text line. The question is, if the Sabres were serious in making a trade for Patrik Laine or Trevor Zegras, who should the Sabres pursue? Would we use draft capital or players maybe like Krebs? Could a Zegras trade be possible with the current contract? Thanks for the question. So this is interesting because these are probably the top two names currently on the trade market. It feels like Trevor Zegras is one of these guys that's just always going to be on the trade market, and we'll see if he ever actually gets dealt. Maybe he will. Laine is, I think, definitely getting traded. Laine is available, and Laine is getting dealt. The reason his name has come up in recent days is that the NHL / the Blue Jackets officially released him from the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. He had been there for mental health reasons, but he's feeling better, apparently, I guess, or at least good enough that he feels he can return to the NHL. And there were already trade rumors about him in the past. So, and listen, let's be honest. I know I'm not one to talk covering the Sabres for a living here, but a star player wanting, or a good big name player wanting to leave Columbus is like the least surprising thing to happen in this sport. So Aaron Portzline on The Athletic said that the Blue Jackets could have traded Laine while he was in the program, but they kind of wanted to wait so they could speak to Laine directly. In fact, part of that report was actually that interested clubs wanted to speak with Laine directly first. However, no club could directly talk to him while he was in the program. This is why people think he could get traded now, because now teams can ask about him or can talk to him directly. And don't you think the Sabres are a team that likes to talk to players directly before they make deals to make sure the player would want to come here? It feels like their type of thing. So Laine is interesting here. We'll get more into him on our next show. To me, of the two, Trevor Zegras is the guy I'd go for. Contract-wise, Zegras has got 2 years left at $5.75 million. Then he is a restricted free agent. at 23 years old. Trevor Zegras, also positional flexibility, center, also plays on the wing as well. I like that part of his game. He's a more complete offensive player. He's a horrific defensive player, but a very good playmaker and a decent finisher. Laine, I think maybe I'm just sick of Victor Olofsson, let's be honest, and that's why I don't want to sign up for Laine again. Laine's a better player than Olofsson was, I know. But he's just kind of souped up Victor Olofsson, I feel like. He is a very, very, very one-dimensional player that's got a crazy good shot, and that's about it. He doesn't really do anything else all that well. 26 years old for Laine, 2 years, $8.7 million, and he really only plays left wing. So for me, Zegras, more contract control, younger. Maybe you could chase some more upside there with him. He could play all different positions up front. And again, maybe I could develop him into a better two-way player than he is right now. Laine, I mean, that ship should be sailed. I think that 3-year age gap is pretty significant. So to me, it's easy that Zegras is the idea between the two. Krebs, obvious name to include in any trade. I don't know that he has a spot in their top 12 forwards right now, and I do think that he is worth being included in any potential trade offer. So yeah, definitely prefer Zegras over Laine. More on Laine, though. I don't want to say it's my least favorite idea. It's not my favorite at all between the two. Zegras, I'll tell you more on our next show why I'd be open to the Laine trade, but it's, again, definitely not my favorite. We'll get, though, to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. What does this contract mean for the Sabres cap-wise? What does it mean for their future outlook in net? And what does it mean for how we evaluate goaltenders? Maybe more specifically, how I evaluate goaltenders. I want to self-reflect on UPL's journey here and my journey kind of watching Luukkonen as he's developed into this player. That's all coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've got the Olympics going on right now. You gotta love that. You've got a lot of sports. Football preseason begins this week, and you can bet on football preseason. I love sports, love them so much, and never want them to stop. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a bonus or a boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Badminton right now if you want it, or wait till Thursday and you get some preseason action between Chicago and who's Chicago playing? The Bears are playing the Texans on Thursday. All right, so you want a little Stephon Diggs revenge bet? Go against the Houston maybe for the Hall of Fame game on Thursday. Check it out. All the odds are available, props available, FanDuel Sportsbook. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen. If you're looking for some good training camp coverage, be sure to check out Joe Marino's Locked On Bills. I saw him today standing on the sideline at St. John Fisher. It was hot. He made the trip up, though. He lives in North Carolina. He was watching. He was there over the weekend, too, on Sunday, and he's going to be there throughout the week. So Joe's got firsthand experience right there watching all of these practices, and there's a lot to pick up. So be sure to check out Locked On Bills. And if you're looking for more of a league-wide spectrum for training camps and the preseason approaching, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. So Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. All right, let's get to it. Waited far too long. Again, apologies for the training camp schedule. The timing was so bad for me, but still. 5-year deal for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And this contract caught me off guard a little bit. Not because of the timing. Arbitration date was coming up, or they were going to figure out an arbitration date soon. So timing's not strange. But term, I guess, a little surprising me. I bet the last time actually I'd said what I thought this deal would look like. Maybe I was about there. Maybe I was about a 5-year deal. But I think I thought it was going to be more money. But so good job on the money part, I think, for the Sabres. 5-year deal, $4.75 million. Now, and he'll be a UFA at the end of it, but not till 2028, July of 2028. On first glance, I get the news update from the Sabres. And I immediately think, ooh, 5 years. I think I told you my favorite idea for a Luukkonen contract was like a 3-year deal. 5 years was a little longer than I would have wanted to go. But as I sat with it, and as I'm reminded of the Ullmark trade that Boston just pulled off with Ottawa, in year 3 of his deal, 1 year left in his contract, I started to think, well, why did I like 3 years? Because I like Luukkonen a lot now. Luukkonen had a tremendous season. I think there were some technical things that he really figured out in his game last year that makes last year repeatable and less likely to be a complete fluke. I think because, playing deeper in his net, which was happening, and playing his angles differently because of that, using his frame maybe more than his athleticism, if that makes sense. He was big and athletic. It's why he got drafted where he was. Big and athletic. And it kind of felt like, again, talking to Owen Parker, Bulldog's son, who used to play goalie at the junior level, he was the one who first put me onto, well, he plays deeper in his goal now. And that's a big change from the year before. It had me thinking, well, okay, that kind of makes sense. I guess what he really did, or it sounds like he did, is he wanted to play goal like an athlete because he's a great athlete. And for that, like, think of what Devin Levi does. Play way out on top of your crease, play super aggressive to take the shot away. But then what that does is you're scrambling more often and you're using your side-to-side movement more often, and you have to be a little bit more athletic because you're moving more. And what Luukkonen maybe started doing was, I'm going to ignore my athleticism and I'm going to play to my frame. I'm going to play like the big goalie I am, which is I sit deeper in my net. I cover more ground than most goaltenders at 6'5", 6'6" even. I think he might have been used to listed, but I think he's listed at 6'5" now. So Luukkonen covers more ground deep in his crease like that. I don't have to move as much. I don't have to scramble as much. I'm more often going to be in position because I'm playing deeper. So that has me thinking that what he did is repeatable. You never know, though, right? Like, goaltending is so up and down. He's going to have down years. All goalies have down years, unless your name is Dominik Hasek or like Henrik Lundqvist was that way. Like, there are very few guys that were like that. So he'll have down years. But I bet what he did is going to be closer to the norm for Luukkonen. So anyways, where I was going with that, though, is even though I think he's developed into number 1 goaltender, my original thought on why I liked 3 years was I personally think, even still, Devin Levi is going to be a star goalie in the league. I think he's got the potential to be a top 5 goaltender in hockey. I'm super high on Devin Levi. And I think it's no slight to Luukkonen at all. I think within a couple of years, Levi is going to be knocking down that door. He's just, I think, too talented. I think he's going to be too good to arrive at that point. So Levi eventually getting there means, well, I'm going to want him to be the number 1, and he's going to need a contract at some point too. And I don't want to be investing $10 million plus in goal because I signed Luukkonen and now I got to sign Levi. But look what Boston just did with Ullmark. Getting time to pay Swayman. What they do? They traded Ullmark away. Why? Because Ullmark's a good goaltender. He's a number 1 goalie, and he has trade value. So they moved him to Ottawa. If that's the downside, this is what I was thinking. Why don't I look 5 years? Because I want to pay Levi eventually. But wait a minute. If UPL remains, this is a good problem to have. If UPL remains a number 1 goaltender over the next 3 years, like I originally wanted, and Levi's turned into the star that I think he could be, well, think about your situation at that point in time. All right, now it's time to pay Levi. Star goalie, you want to turn the net over to him. It's undeniable. He's got to be your number 1 because he's one of the best in hockey. I got this other guy, Luukkonen, who's really good. Okay, go to the trade market. You're telling me if Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen at 27 years old in a couple of years, still playing like a number 1 goalie with 2 years left at $4.75 million is not going to be a legitimate trade asset? Because, of course, he'll be a legitimate trade asset. So again, if that's your biggest problem is, I might have 2 great goaltenders in 3 years, really, that's not that big of a problem. The worst case scenario is that he doesn't hold up to what he was last year, and I don't think that's impossible, but I definitely think that it's more likely that he'll remain about what he was last year, which I think is a good number 1 goalie in the league. I think he'll need to take another step to be a star-level goalie in the league. He'll have to be, a little bit more consistent on the power play, or shorthanded, I should say. He'll have to, I think, have a little bit more of that consistency that he lost a little bit middle of the year, but even then he didn't really lose it that much. I guess really he's got to win. Maybe that's all it'll take. Maybe just wins coming with the numbers he had last year, goals coming with the numbers he had last year, and he'll reach that stardom that goalies typically get eventually in the league. So Luukkonen, 5-year deal, $4.75 million per year. He'll be a free agent in 2029. All good. I want to look back on Luukkonen's journey as a prospect, how I've thought of him over the years, and really how much he's grown, at least in my eyes, and I know a lot of other fans' eyes, in the last year. And really, listen, if you were a Luukkonen stan, I mean, you got to feel like you nailed this one, because there were a lot of fans out there that were patient with him. I don't even want to say the Sabres were that patient with him. I'll explain that too. I think the Sabres were in the middle. I think I was very, down on Luukkonen a year ago. There were many that were still very high on him. Like, this guy's still going to be a good NHL goaltender. I feel like the Sabres were more in the middle. Go get to all that when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Game Time. There's a lot going on right now. Soccer preseason. Liverpool's in the country. I was looking up some tickets on Game Time the other day. Didn't end up working out schedule-wise because it was on Friday in Pittsburgh, but I was looking at tickets at the Pittsburgh Stadium, and the seats, the views were right there. Easy to shop on Game Time if you want to check it out. I was looking for some Bills-Jets tickets for October on Game Time as well. Authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and they're available. Killer last-minute deals right up the first pitch, right up the kickoff, sometimes even available after the game has begun, and you know you're going to get a great deal then. This app, flash deals, zone deals, last-minute tickets, as I mentioned, you get every chance to save money, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, everything to keep you protected for buying your tickets. Panoramic view from your seats in the app before you buy. That's definitely my number one feature, because it's exactly what you're going to be looking at. No guesswork at all. You're taking the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is a Sabre for the next 5 years. Well, maybe less, as I mentioned. I love the idea. I don't need to rush him out the door, but I love the idea of Levi becoming that superstar goaltender. And in 3 years' time, when it's time to pay other guys, maybe it's time to pay Zach Benson, and you've already paid so many others that you got to create some cap space, and you got Levi, and you want to pay him too. Well, let's trade our Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen contract with 2 years left at $4.75 million, and let's get a first-round pick. Let's get a superstar prospect. Let's go get a cheap 20-year-old that could play at the bottom of our lineup. I think your options could be plentiful if he remains a number one goalie like he just was. Luukkonen, though, it was a up and down journey as a prospect. I think that is the fairest way that I could say it. And I do think there was a lot of down, and that is where I arrived with Luukkonen about a year ago. So just to kind of rehash where we've gone with him. Second round pick, a long time ago now, by the way, 2017. We're talking 7 years ago. The Bills hadn't even broke the drought yet the last time when they drafted Luukkonen. So in the 7 years, in the 6 years, really, before he became the number one goalie, what did we have? We had a guy that went to the OHL originally. This was like the first full year after he was in Finland for a little bit. I think that first year after he got drafted, and he was good there. Then he went to Sudbury of the OHL, and he was lights out. 53 games that season, 920 save percentage, a 38-11 record. Then went to the playoffs, 4-2-1 record there, 906 save percentage there. Great in the OHL. Fantastic. Then he runs into some injury problems, hip injuries. And for goalies, that's tough. And I'll get back to that. That's one of the lessons learned here, I think, for me, is the hip injuries. Because then what comes after those injuries? He has a year after that where he only plays 33 games, 10 for the Amerks, with an 874 save percentage. Horrible. Cincinnati in the ECHL, 23 games, 912 save percentage. Pretty good. Then, time to play in Rochester a little bit more, right? That year, 14 games for Rochester, .888 save percentage. Not good at all. 4 games for the Sabres, .906 save percentage. More injury stuff that keeps popping up and is nagging him. Then the year after, 9 games for the Sabres, .917. 35 games for the Amherst, .900. That was the big year, the first big sample size in Rochester. You had a few games before that didn't go well. Then he played basically a 1B level workload. And what did you get? You got a league average level number for him, at least in terms of save percentage. I don't have any more advanced stats on that. I didn't watch those games all the time because Rochester, I'm not clued in until the playoffs. So take that with a grain of salt, but his numbers, at least the save percentage number, was not fantastic at all. And then he plays 33 games for the Sabres after not playing well again for Rochester. And that was more circumstance. This is now the 21-22 season. This is the year they missed by 1 point. And he get that one hot month, right, where he was rookie of the month. But otherwise, and even that month, they won a lot of games 5-4. Go look at the games he won. And this was part of my reasoning last year why I wasn't that high on him is, well, if you keep showing me the reason he's a good goalie is, oh, look at this rookie of the month campaign that he had in December and January. Like, okay, well, let me look at these. Okay, there's a couple good games here, 41 saves, 2 shots allowed, 2 goals allowed, 39 saves, 2 goals allowed in the middle of that year. And then, okay, let's look at some of these wins. He allowed 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, 3, 2, 4, 4, 3. That's the goals allowed in all of his wins that year. How good was he really? I'm not saying he was terrible. His numbers weren't great, though. They were not good NHL goalie level. And he ends that season with some not great advanced numbers, an .891 save percentage, a .406 quality start percentage, goals saved above expected. He was near the bottom of the league. Just, I didn't see the signs a year ago. Then, where I arrived, and I was probably on the extreme end of things for Luukkonen, because I was just done. Like, I don't need to see this guy anymore. I don't, because part of it wasn't just the NHL. And this is why I've liked Levi. Levi, everywhere he goes, he's the best. Everywhere. He is the best goalie in college. He's the best goalie at the World Juniors. He's the best goalie in the AHL when he plays at all these levels. For those 7 games at the end of that season 2 years ago, was he the best in the NHL? Maybe not the best, but he was really good. And then this last year, again, advanced numbers show he was pretty good. Best maybe for his age, though. Levi, every step shows you he's the best. Luukkonen hadn't shown the signs to me. Luukkonen, it was all based on traits. The numbers didn't show a top-level goalie in the AHL. They didn't show a great goaltender in his final days in Finland. They didn't show... No, they did in the OHL. You had to go back, though, to the OHL to find him looking like a top prospect. But it was the traits. They were there the whole time. The size, the athleticism, and the frame. And if there was a maturity to come for him, there was an NHL goalie for him in there somewhere. And that is what played out. And the other thing, so 2 lessons for me on evaluating Luukkonen. 1, age. And this is one where I kind of am mad at myself for not taking into account, because I am this way with other goalies. And I've made this point about other goalies before. I think I did it about Ullmark. I think I've done it about Leonard maybe in the past. But goalies take longer to develop and often don't reach their primes until like 27 years old, 28 years old. Very different from skaters. Skaters now are reaching their prime in their early 20s. Goalie is not that way. Goalie takes a while. Ryan Miller didn't even make the NHL until he was 25 years old, 26 years old. 7 years after he was drafted, before he was a regular NHL goaltender. Ullmark, kind of the same thing. It takes a long time for these guys to develop, and then even longer sometimes to reach their primes. So that was always in there with Luukkonen. And it's dumb, I guess, to have missed it. And that combined with the traits should have left everyone, including me, open to this happening, to him developing into this level of goaltender. Because you can't know when a guy's 22, 23 years old. You don't know yet what that guy's going to become. So that's lesson 1. Lesson 2 for me, I think, is honestly, I'm going to be pretty specific with this one. I think the hip injuries, that's going to be lodged in my brain for years to come. It was prior to the 2019 season that Luukkonen had that double hip surgery. I really wonder how long that lingered with him, how long that affected him, because I'm sure any goalie would tell you double hip surgery sounds like one of the hardest things to come back from for a goaltender, because that's where all your movement, that's where all your motion is often being generated from. So for me, that specifically, I'm going to remember, if a goalie has hip injuries like that, it might be worthwhile to give that guy a lot of time before he can return to form. Because for Luukkonen, I mean, last year, let's say, was the first year he really took off. 2019, I mean, that's right in the middle of his development curve. And if it took him 5 years, let's say 4 years, to get all the way back to his peak athletic form and to figure out technical stuff, kind of grow into his body a little bit more. Okay, well, that's worth remembering. Couple years. Give a guy a couple years before, he can get all the way back, if you're getting, especially double hip surgery. I don't know about 1 versus 2 and how different that might be, but double hip surgery for Luukkonen after the 2018-19 season. So very specific to that one. I'm going to want to remember that injury, that surgery in the future. 2019 to 2023, it took him to go from top prospect, then has hip surgery. 4 years go by, then you see the breakout. That's worth remembering. And the other one is traits plus age. That, to me, is the lesson learned from Luukkonen. So, go through my Twitter. They're all there. I'm not deleting any. I saw a couple people, rightfully so, quote tweeting like, "Oh, you better delete this one." No. You can't delete your freezing cold takes. You got to leave them up there for the world to see forever. Because we're not perfect. I mean, I miss more than I hit, no doubt. Let's see. What's my worst one? What's my worst Luukkonen tweet? I'm looking through them right now. I mean, remember last year I was banging the drum for him to be waived. I didn't care if he got waived. I was ready to see Comrie be the backup. Woof. Big miss on that one, especially for Comrie, because Comrie did not do that. Did not do anything good. Luukkonen. What's my worst Luukkonen tweet of all time? It might be the one just saying that it's fine for him to be waived. Let's see. If I'm looking through, I guess if you really look through a lot of my tweets about Luukkonen, a lot of them are stat related, and they end up being, they were right at the time, the stats. The point though ends up being, misconstrued, or ends up being wrong. Like this one, Luukkonen since signing with the Sabres. This was on March 22nd, 2023. So at the end of the year where they missed by 1 point. 69 AHL games, 895 save percentage. 44 NHL games, 890 save percentage. Goals saved above expected, 80th out of 96. Where's the evidence? UPL's ready for the NHL and needs to be penciled in for next season. I mean, that's what a lot of it was. A lot of it was, here are the numbers. Where's the NHL goaltender? Where is everybody seeing a guy that could be an NHL goaltender? So that's the lesson. It's the hip injury. Focus on traits sometimes a little bit more, and age with netminders. Definitely focus on age. But I am trusting the numbers with Levi. I'm trusting the numbers indicate Levi is going to be a top NHL goalie, and I still think we're on our way to that. So, all right, I'm glad Luukkonen proved me wrong, especially, and end up being the player he is, and is going to be with the Buffalo Sabres for the next 5 years. He'll play playoff games. That's my bold prediction right now. Luukkonen will play playoff games for the Buffalo Sabres. Let's do it. At Sneaky Joe Sports, if you want to follow me on Twitter for whoever I'm gonna get wrong next. Who am I doubting right now the most? Luukkonen was the guy. Who right now am I doubting the most on the Buffalo Sabres? Maybe Dylan Cousins. You might want to call me a hater of right now. Who else would you call me a hater of? Jordan Greenway, but I mean, how many Jordan Greenway stands are out there? Other than that, maybe am I forgetting somebody that's obvious here that I'm like kind of anti or just not thinking is all that good? I don't actually know that I have a guy. It might be Cousins, but Cousins, I'm not like that anti. I think he could perfectly well get back to 25, 30 goals. I just think I'm just not sold that it's definitely going to happen. I don't know. We'll figure that out. You don't need a guy like that anyway. But glad to see Luukkonen developed into what he's been. That is going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you want to send in a question or a comment, be sure to check out our text line, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, where you could sign up for that. Be looking for some texts, looking for some questions as well, going into our next show, which we will be focusing on Patrik Laine. Laine, looking for a trade out of Columbus, big goal scorer, but a very similar player to me to Victor Olofsson. Better, but style-wise, I don't know that I'm ready to sign up for it. We'll go through all of it, the numbers, the contract, the fit, what trade. I got some trade package ideas, what it could cost for Laine. It might not be as expensive as you think, which might leave me a little bit open to it because of that fact. Get to all that coming up on our next show. You got a thought on Laine? Be sure to shoot it our way, Twitter or text line. That's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.